Yep.
Much better. Hey, folks, forget anything we said last time.
Yeah. We're here on a new start.
We're here in a new start. So, welcome, Rabbi Z,
What's up, folks? Here at OC Recording.
OC Recording, taking some powerful spiritual stuff and sending them out through these incredible waves and technology.
Okay.
And we're delighted to be here.
Yep. Baruch
Um,
Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
So, this week, the topic is pursuing happiness versus pursuing growth. Um, how can you end up on doing both?
All right.
The truth is, sometimes you need to make a choice. And we're going to speak about that a little bit if we eventually get there. First, what we're going to be focusing on is a text in the book of Kings Malachim, which we read in this week's Haftorah. We read it on Shabbat at the synagogue after the Torah reading, and we'll take the topic from there.
Sounds good.
We welcome your questions, comments, and complaints.
No complaining.
Yeah, you could complain. We welcome them. We may not do anything with them.
Yeah.
So some background over here. Basically, this is a story which unfolds around the year 740 BCE. So to give you an idea of where this is historically for the Jewish people, Exodus of Egypt, they enter into the land of Israel. You had several hundred years. Then eventually you had kings. You had King David, King Shlomo, and then the kingdom split in Israel. You had the kings of Judea, and then you had the kings of Israel with the other 10 tribes. And during that time period, there was a king named Achav. He was not a king of Judea. He was a king of the other 10 tribes. And he was not good in terms of spirituality and in terms of connection to God. He married this woman who was not Jewish. Her name was Izebel in Hebrew, or Jezebel, and she really pushed this agenda of bringing idolatry and the idol of the Baal to the Jewish people. And it was a big issue. It was a very big issue. And one of the things that she went out to do was she tried to kill all the Jewish prophets and replace them with the prophets of the Baal. And there was a man, his name was Ovadia. He was a prophet himself, and he actually also worked in Achav's kingdom. He was the leader of Achav's estate, and I guess for whatever reason, she was not after him. He was a very honest man, a very, very holy man, and he went and gathered 100 prophets of Hashem, of God, and hid them in a cave so he could save them from this woman's vindictive behavior and horrible behavior. And he was successful. He was saving them, and he was bankrolling the entire thing, even though he could have taken some money from Achav and tried to do it, but he didn't do that. And eventually he ran out of money, and he needed to keep them going. He needed to give them food. So he borrowed money from, interestingly, from Achav's son. And he went and continued keeping them going, and he started paying back the debt until he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Once he passed away, there was no more payments, and now Achav's son, the debt collector, comes and wants to get his money back, and that's where the Haftorah opens up.
Okay.
All right. So it begins over here. Ve'isha achas. You see that?
Yes.
Ve'isha achas, a woman. Minishay b'nei Anavim, the wife of one of the prophets. So this is Ovadiah's wife.
Okay.
The wife of the person that borrowed the money and was saved as prophets and now passed away. Now his wife, Tzaka el Elisha, comes crying to Elisha.
Mm-hmm.
Elisha was one of the great prophets. He was a disciple of Elijah the prophet, right? And he lived in Judea, so therefore he was safe.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman comes to Elisha crying to him. Lamar, she's saying, Avdacha ishi mes. Your servant, my husband, has passed away. Va'ata yadaita ki avdacha haya yarei Hashem, and you know that your servant was God-fearing. V'hanoisha bala kachas shnei yolodai leila avadim, and the tax collector has come to take my 2 children as slaves to him in repaying of the debt. She had no money. So the guy says, well, I'll take your children and they'll work for me, and that's the way you'll pay your debt back. And she comes crying to Elisha saying, like, what are we supposed to do? And why did he borrow money? To save people. Right? Vayemer Eleha Elisha. And Elisha responds to her and says like this, Ma esalach, what can I do? Hagidali, tell me, Ma yeshlach babayit, what do you have in your house? You got anything? Vatemer ein l'shivchaska kel babayit. She says, all I have is some phone chargers. No. I don't have anything. Right? Ki im asuk shemen, I have 1 jug of oil. That's all I own. Vayemer, so he tells her, Lechi, go. Shali lach keli min achutz, go borrow vessels from outside. Go to the neighbors, get as many vessels as you can. Me'ez kol shcheneich, from all your neighbors. Kelim reikim al tamiti. Do not diminish, do not minimize empty vessels. In other words, get as many empty vessels as you can. Imagine, there's a painting I saw of somebody depicted what her house looked like, and you see on the table you have like all these different sizes of jugs and things like that. Ubas v'sagar tadelos, come inside the house, close the door. Ba'adeicha v'ad b'nayich, behind you and your children. V'yetzakt al kol ha'kelim ha'ela, and then you should pour from the single jug of oil that you have into all these other jugs. V'hamale tasi, and carry out the full ones. And the verse continues, Vatelech mi'ita, she went, Vatiskar adelas ba'ada, uva'ad banea, and she closed the door. Hey magishim aleh, her children are bringing to her the empty vessels, v'hi maitzakes, and she's pouring. And the miracle in this is that the oil kept on going. It never stopped. Vayehi kimlois hakelim, and when the vessels were complete, were full, Vatemer al benah, so he told her, Hagisha alai oit keli, get me another vessel. Vayemer aleh ein oit keli vayamid hasham, and there's no more empty vessels, and the oil stopped pouring. You need to get the phone, or
no good.
Should call twice.
No.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right.
Yeah. There's messages on.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe as a text her.
I'll text her.
Going nowhere. There's nowhere to run, man. It's over.
On my shoulders. All right, we're back.
So she comes back to Elisha, and she tells him everything that happened, and he tells her, "Vatave vatag Elisha lekim vayemer," and he tells her, "Lekim michrias Hashem, and go sell the oil now. V'shalmi es nishyech, and go pay back the debt collector. V'at ubenayich tichi benayser, and everything that's left over, because I guess there was such abundance and so much oil, you and your children will live off of the rest of the money."
That's
the
story.
Oil.
That's a lot of oil, right?
It's a lot of oil. There had to have been a lot of oil after living off of that forever. And I guess those days, oil was very valuable, and still is in the Middle East, right? So that's the story. Good? Yeah. So I want to. This is an incredible story, and this, like I said, that's the story that happened so many years ago. About 250 years ago, Reb Shneir Zalman of Liadi, the first Chabad Rebbe, gave a fascinating Kabbalistic understanding of this entire narrative. And that's kind of going to lead us into our discussion here today.
All right.
Here we go. So he starts off saying, first of all, Ve'isha achas, this one woman, Isha, this woman is referring to the soul. And the way to read it is, the soul is crying out to God. So, and we can see that in the words. Elisha. So in the story is this woman is crying out to a man known as Elisha. Elisha actually means Kelisha, God help me. So the soul is crying out to God. What's the matter? Avdacha ishi meis. Your servant, my husband, has passed away. Ishi or ish is the word that's being employed here to describe husband. The word ish is made up of 3 letters: Aleph, Yud, and Shin. If we take out the letter Yud, it's Aish, fire. The letter Yud represents God. In fact, we know that God's name has 4 letters. His first letter is a Yud, next letter is a Hey, next letter is a Vav, next letter is a Hey. The letter Yud represents where God's presence is resting, and the reason why the Yud is chosen for that is because the Yud is the smallest letter. And it's not just the smallest letter, it's almost non-existent. It's just a dot fundamentally. Right? We make it into a little square, etc. And there's a point on top and point on bottom, but fundamentally it's a dot. And the dot is the ultimate form of openness, in the sense where it's humility. And that's also why we can get into this on the side, but that's why it's the first letter of God's name. And also we know the term Chabad, for example. So Chabad is made up of 3 words: Chachma, Bina, and Dat. So let's take a moment to understand just one of those things. Chachma usually is translated as wisdom. But Chachma is describing a point where, when you're studying something, you're trying to figure it out. So you're looking at the subject matter and it's just darkness. It's like the issue's not coming together. You see the different things. It's like, what's going on over here? And then all of a sudden it hits you, right? That hit, that explosion of lightning, that insight that comes to us, that's called chachma. Now, it could happen that as soon as the insight comes, it makes sense. That's called chachma going into bina. If we could isolate the making sense part from the flash of insight, we are making a distinction between chachma and bina. So what I mean, a better way of understanding that is, imagine you're studying with somebody else and you're both grappling with that issue, and then your friend says, "Oh, I got it." So you're like, "Oh, tell me." He's like, "1 second." You're like, "What do you mean 1 second? Do you have it or you don't have it?" "No, I have it." "So why can't you tell it to me?" I need to work it through.
Processing.
It's a processing. So sometimes the processing comes like, "Oh, it's that and that's that." Okay, I see it. And sometimes the processing is the light is shining. Another way to describe the difference between Chachma and Bina is seeing and hearing. Chachma is mentally seeing something. Bina is intellectually listening to something. When we listen to something, the processing is the primary force, and that's why it takes time to listen. One picture is worth 1,000 words. Why? Because when we see it, the energy comes to us in a much different way. It's not that we're processing quicker, it's that the whole experience is fundamentally different. And this is a whole discussion for itself. But let's look at the word chachma for a second. The word chachma means, it can be broken up into 2 words, which means koachma, the energy of what? It's the energy of humility. And the reason why that is because it's the humility that allows and produces the flash of insight. When a person goes with a mindset that they know everything, they will learn nothing. It's only when we're in the darkness, and that moment when we're grappling that darkness, that's a form of humility, and that itself opens up for the presence of the insight. And what we're taking this is the chachma is represented by the letter Yud of Hashem, of God's name, and it's because it's in chachma that God's presence rests. And to bring it back to what we're saying is, so the Yud represents godliness, represents the humility of man, where God rests His presence. So back to the word ish, ishi, or ish. Ish means my husband.
Mm-hmm.
It's made up of three words again. Aleph, Yud, Shin. Three letters. Aleph, Shin means fire. Yud is God. It's the fire to God.
Mm-hmm.
It's the love and passion that we have to God. So Ve'isha Achas, this soul cries out to God and says, my fire has died. Avdacha ishi meis. My fire has died. In other words, I don't have a passion anymore. I'm not interested. It doesn't talk to me. I don't feel connected.
Could be vice versa as well. It could be God's fire coming to us, or like His light shining on us.
How?
Well, you're saying our fire, like we want like we're needing passion. So maybe it's God's light, His knowledge, coming to us.
But we're not feeling it. So, yeah, we're not feeling our passion towards God, and therefore we're not being able to receive or to be open towards God's passion.
Mm-hmm.
It could happen, but it's not happening for this particular soul in this narrative. So the soul's crying out to God and saying, my passion's dead. Vahanosha, and then the verse continues, and the tax collector came to take my two children. The word nosha means tax collector, but it also debt collector, I should say, but it also means it comes from the word forgetfulness. Ki nashani elokim be'eretz ani. Forgetfulness. The force of forgetfulness is the force of the animal soul. The animal soul, one of its primary ways that it works with us is, or against us, I should say, is it causes us to forget what we're really into, who we really are. Mm-hmm. That's its method of getting us to do things. So it distracts us, it shows us other things, and we become forgetful. So Vahanosha, the animal soul within us, the evil inclination, came to take my two children captive. What are the children of the soul? The children of the soul are the love and the fear of God. It says love and fear are children. Why are they called children? Because the mind is like the parents, and the mind produces the emotions. Mm-hmm. And this is a fundamental principle in Chabad, that the ideal way of a human being, the ideal way a human being should conduct themselves is that the mind produces the emotions. More than just guides the emotions, but actually produces them. Producing the emotions would mean thinking about something, meditating about something to the point where you actually have an emotional reaction towards that experience. And now the emotion is produced. Most times emotions just are, and we're reacting from our heart directly, very minimally filtering through our minds. Mm-hmm. So the soul comes to God and says, my passion is lost, and the evil inclination is now come to take my love and fear towards God, which was meant to be working towards you, God, and now is being taken captive and being worked towards negative forces. Mm-hmm. That's the background. That's the opening. So as the story continues and the prophet Elisha responds to the woman, we're reading it now. God is responding to the soul. And he asks each and every single one of us, what do you have? Okay, you don't have passion. Your love and fear have been taken from you. They're now being slaves to the animal soul. Is there anything left that you do have in your home? What does she say?
Oil.
I got some oil. Now, oil Kabbalistically represents the essence of the soul. That's why the word oil in Hebrew is called shemen. And shemen comes from the word shmona. Shmona is the number 8. 8 is beyond nature. 7 is a cycle of nature. Mm-hmm. 8 is miraculous, which is why Hanukkah is 8 days. It's celebrating the miracle. It's also connected to the nature of oil. Oil, on one hand, always rises above when you mix oil and water. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, oil seeps through everything. Mm-hmm. Right? It has almost opposing character traits. On one hand, it always rises above. On the other hand, you put it in a salad and it gets everywhere. It gets in your hands, it gets in your clothing, right? And this dual nature of oil is connected to the fact that oil is what we have in this world as a sort of representation of the essence. When you talk about the essence of the soul, on one hand, the essence of the soul is beyond everything. On the other hand, it's in everything, which is why it it has that dual character trait. So the soul turns back to God and says, all I have is my essence of my soul. All I have is my identity, right? I know I'm connected. So he tells the soul, God turns back to us and says, go get empty vessels and get as many empty vessels as you can. What is empty vessels? Empty vessels are when we do a mitzvah, when we do a good deed, when we do something that God wants us to do, and we do it with no passion and with no interest, it's called an empty vessel. It says doing a mitzvah without passion is like a body without a soul. So what God is telling us, look, I know you don't have passion. I know you're not interested. I know you're not feeling it. It's dead, right? The passion is gone. Just do mitzvahs with emptiness, but go out there. Just do them, right? If it means putting on tefillin in the morning, or going to pray, or keeping kosher, or whatever mitzvah that one encounters, like it's not talking to you. It's completely meaningless, but do them, and do as many as you can. Like you said, don't diminish. Borrow. Like just get as many empty vessels as you can, and take that oil and pour them into the empty vessels. In other words, sometimes we do a good deed, we do a mitzvah because we feel connected, or we want to feel connected. We feel passionate. And sometimes we have to do a mitzvah, we don't feel connected. It's because we do it because this is who I am. That's what it means, I think, to do a mitzvah with the oil. The oil represents the essence of the soul, the identity, right? I'm Jewish. This is who I am. This is the way I'm behaving, and that's why I'm doing it. So now there's no necessary passion. There's conviction. And what the prophet's telling the woman, pour the oil into the vessels. God is telling us, take that essence that you do have, your sense of identity, like you're just Jewish, and pour that into all your empty vessels. That should be the force and the motivating factor that you need to be able to do mitzvahs. There's a story about a Hasidic Jew. His name was Mendel Futterfass. He was a remarkable person. In fact, he was imprisoned in Siberia for about 8 to 10 years because the communists, they didn't allow the teaching of Judaism, etc. And he went and he risked his life to nonetheless gather children together and to teach them and to try to keep Judaism going in communist Russia, which was very much under attack by the communists. And eventually they caught up with him and they threw him in prison. And then God eventually made it to the United States. He passed away in 1994. He was a great follower, a chassid of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe at one point encouraged the chassidim to go out and to find fellow Jews and to offer them to put on tefillin. So we'd go out there to the streets of Manhattan and stop people and say, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, right? Are you Jewish, etc.? Put on tefillin, light Shabbos candles. He did not know, he had a few words in English, but he wanted to do it. He wanted to do the thing. So how do you do it if you only know? He gets onto the subway, and the story is he meets somebody and he says, "You Jew?" He says, "I'm Jewish." He says, "You Jew, I Jew." No, I Jew, you Jew, I tefillin, you tefillin. And he convinced him, right? What was so powerful about that? Like, I'm not going to give you an explanation about the beauty and the meaning of tefillin, which it is, and the passion and what it can do for us spiritually, and the connection that happens when we do it and everything else. It's like godly antennas, right? It's about identity. You're Jewish, you put on tefillin, right? This is just what you do, right? And we can also apply this principle in other areas in life. Like this is just who I am. It's no longer about pursuing the interest or the meaning or the passion, etc. So God is telling us, Kalim Reikim Al Tamiti, gather as many empty vessels as you can, and pour that conviction into all of them. And that will sustain you. And that will be able to redeem your children. And you'll be able to live off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he told you, you'll be able to live off of the oil. That will keep you going. And that's the underlying, very powerful Kabbalistic narrative that happens when the soul cries out to God in that conversation, and God's like, I get it. It's tough. Just do it. Nike.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I have maybe an alternate interpretation.
Good.
Though I feel we might fail here, but so what if the oil kind of represents her soul and she already has the passion and the conviction, and so she's full of doing mitzvot with passion, and maybe the empty vessels represent Jews that don't have that conviction. So she's kind of pouring some of her passion and conviction into them, and from then, it's like the pyramid scheme. Like you pour some passion, conviction into me, and
you're pouring it
help
to the next person.
So it grows in that way.
I like that. I think that's totally aligned with the message. Right?
All right.
Yeah. So gather as many empty vessels as you can and fill them up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the reason why I connect with that more is also because the beauty of giving to others when it comes to inspiration and motivation is that it doesn't take anything away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened in the story. She kept pouring, and there was just more.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next vessel is able to pour into the next, like you're saying, and it follows on. So that's a great interpretation.
It's only like when we talk about like sound, which we'll get to in one of these conversations, it's like form of energy, but in science they say that energy is never created or destroyed, it's only transferred.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with things like that, when you do good deeds and you do mitzvot and you help other people, it kind of gives them energy, and like you said, it stays within you as well, and it's a way of kind of creating energy or making more oil.
Yeah. So
that's another conversation.
That's a great conversation, and that reminds me of something else where we could speak about energy and take it a little differently. So somebody's in a bad mood, and therefore they treat the store clerk obnoxiously, right? So that person gets home and is not in a good mood, and maybe is not the best person in their family right now, mother or father, and they're not. And the kid goes to sleep upset. And then they go to school the next day, and they're kind of giving attitude, right? So this energy is just passed on, right?
What goes around comes around.
What goes around comes around. But what happens if somebody in that juncture makes a decision to stop it and to fight it and to get rid of it? So they stop that. So what I just described happened in the course of 12 hours. But think about it. This is historic. We're probably still suffering, not probably, we're still suffering Adam and Eve's bad moods. That's still trickling down into the world. And we're fighting that same energy. We should totally do a discussion on this and the music, and speak about how this energy thing works. And it's really amazing. So we're not just trying to fix the past. The past is still very much unfolding, just taking different manifestations. So one of the ways I wanted to take this discussion was, what do you do when you're not feeling passionate, when you're not feeling inspired, when it's just not doing it for you, and it's going on for a while? So I think people in general have developed this mindset where it's all about pursuing happiness, right? What am I going to do that makes me happy? What do I do that makes me happy? And I wonder if maybe there's another way to look at things, and that is pursuing purpose. It's also marriage. Today, there's a big discussion. Are you happy in your marriage? Are you happy in your marriage? There's a rabbi, Rabbi Steinsaltz. I'm going to read some of his writings in a minute because I really like the way he puts things. He says, there was a time when marriage wasn't meant to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe wasn't the only discussion people had. Were you happy in marriage? And I'm not saying that people should be miserable in their marriage, but the point is, like, happiness became the chief morality in terms of what is good and what's bad. Well, are you happy? Yeah, okay, then it's good.
Mm-hmm.
You're not happy, then you got. Are you fulfilling your purpose? And in pursuing our purpose, then the happiness many times comes. But when we make happiness the goal, many times we end up struggling a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to read. He put it very interestingly. Here's what he writes. He wrote, peace of mind has come to be regarded in our time as one's life's highest ideals. See, he's writing here about peace of mind, but I feel like it's somewhat connected. Clergymen, leaders of cults, psychologists, advertisers all seem to agree that this is a thing most to be desired, right? And of course, all of them are in some measure prepared to provide it. Rest and relaxation are no longer exclusive province of resorts and sanatoriums. Peace of mind is regarded not merely as something pleasant or desirable, but as a spiritual ideal and significant life goal. The final achievement to which various schools of thought and meditation aspire. And the whole premise that he has, it's an article called "A Strife of the Spirit," and you could probably Google it, or if you want to see the whole article, you can hit us up and I'll send it to you. But the premise is pursuing peace of mind or pursuing our purpose here, and that's really, I think, what we need to ask ourselves in terms of how we conduct our lives. Here you have somebody, the soul's crying out to God, saying, "I don't feel passion," and God says, "Okay." It's not about feeling passion. It's about doing what you got to do. You do what you got to do, and then that empty vessel will get filled up again, based on conviction. And that's the way the life goes round and round. So
not so much about like going to seek happiness, but doing the right thing and putting out a positive energy and having it reverberate back to you.
Yeah. So instead of looking for things that make you happy, try to pursue your purpose with happiness.
It's a deep one.
Yeah. In other words, it happens also, like I go out you take my kids to an amusement park.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, it's like, I used to do this and I stopped because I realized I'm like every hour. So you guys are having fun? You're having a good time? So there's this pressure, now expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be continuously having fun. And if I'm not having fun, no one can keep that going forever.
Mm-hmm.
You try to have a good time. And the experience is what it is, and some moments were more fun than others, and that's the way it is. And it's better to have that conversation the next day. So what do you guys think? You have a good time, right? Instead of like every moment.
Mm-hmm.
Reason why people ask every moment, am I having fun? Am I happy? Am I happy? Am I happy? Is because happiness became the morality. Happiness became the ultimate purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to keep checking with it. So instead of looking constantly, is this thing making me happy? Is this aligned with who I want to be and my purpose of what I feel like I need to be doing in this world? That's a question to ask all the time. And if I'm being miserable in the process of searching my purpose, then I need to figure out why. Happiness is important, and it's a very important thing in Judaism. But I think the way to get to it is not by pursuing it directly, but by pursuing purpose and creating energy and space to be happy around that purpose.
So would you say that the purpose is growth, and that's why we would pursue growth growth as opposed to pursuing
Yeah.
happiness.
Yeah, and you know the best example of that is like, you know, when you go to the gym, the only time you're really starting to grow is when you're feeling the resistance, when it's painful. So, you know, somebody who is not struggling with passion, they're happy, everything's going great, right? So that's good, and that's what we hope for. But then a person says, you know what, I'm not feeling anything right now. Okay, so I say that's the great. Now you can grow, because now you're doing something, so you're creating a muscle around that behavior. What makes something more embedded within me when I do it, even when I'm not feeling it? So if I go, let's take the gym again, for example. If I go to the gym when I'm feeling like I'm in the mood to go to the gym, so then that doesn't tell me anything about my connection to it, because I'm feeling it, so I'm doing it. Then one day I wake up like I'm not interested in going. So I say, okay, that's the perfect time. Now you have an opportunity. Why? Because if you're going to go anyway, you're growing into this. This is becoming a part of you in a way that's much deeper than just reactionary to what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody came to the Tzemach Tzedek and said, you know, I'm so upset. You got to help me. What should I do? I don't have any passion to study Torah, and one needs to study Torah. So Tzemach Tzedek said, what should I do? I do have a passion. He says, you don't have a passion, and if you study anyway, growth is happening right then.
Mm-hmm.
You're going places. Versus when you study because you already feel like studying, you're in the same place. Studying brings growth, etc. But fundamentally, as a person, you're not really changing that narrative in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So pursuing growth. So when a person's not feeling happy about something at that moment, and nonetheless they connect to it, they're growing it. Versus if they're just going to pursue happiness, if I'm not happy, I'm not going to connect to it, and then I pursued happiness, but I didn't generate that muscle at that moment, at that point.
So just got to make sure you're pursuing the right thing that
Yes.
doesn't make that you're not excited about. So what in like for me, I mean, what is it about doing mitzvot? That would be like the ultimate thing to do to grow for a Jewish person.
For a Jewish person, it would mean to grow in their relationship with God, and you know, I'm using the word purpose, but it's God's purpose, right? It's not like you say everyone should be like, I have the right to determine my own purpose. Well, you didn't make you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not coming to take away anybody's rights here, but my point is, God put us here, and He's determined our purpose. And we can have a discussion about what it means. How do we determine our purpose? You know, how do I know what my purpose is? But fundamentally, in terms of doing mitzvot and doing the things that we need to do as a Jew, whether it's keeping kosher, or whether it's going to synagogue, or whether it's helping somebody, giving charity, things of that nature, and the whole 613, don't link it so directly with how I'm feeling. It should be more primarily linked with who am I. And the more I connect with who am I, then the day that I'm not feeling in the mood is a day to celebrate. Because now it's becoming me in a more fundamental way.
Right. There's just a million things that I don't want to do, and so how do I pick from those to decide, you know, what's the best way to grow? And I mean, growth, I would say, is, you know, growing higher towards God, right? And so the way you do that is by doing commandment or doing mitzvot.
Doing mitzvot, but yeah, it is true. You need to do it one step at a time, right? And it's not a matter. You don't go into the gym and start lifting 500 pounds, right? So a few keys. First of all, when you take on a resolution, only take it on for a minimal amount of time. So there's even tefillin. You know, I saw somebody.
Don't commit to do it. Just start small.
Start small. I mean, so do it once a week if you haven't been doing it, and then maybe add. That's if a person's added like, I can do this every day, then go ahead and do it every day. But a person knows in their own experience, where are they extending themselves beyond, and where are they kind of limited.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to give a perfect prescription for in general, but each person knows in their own experience, and that's why when it says in Pirkei Avot, a person should have kind of a spiritual mentor where they can teach them. Okay, you've been doing this. You start with this amount of prayer. Now add a little bit and things like that.
But some people, it's like they want to be physically fit, like metaphorically,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know to go to the gym or to run outside, or like I'm thinking even bigger, like somebody watching this video that they want to grow spiritually. I mean, what's a place that they should start, or just
Right.
something concrete? Like, I mean,
That's a good question.
and maybe it ties into the question we had from from one of our viewers from the last
What
week.
is higher living?
Yeah, what is higher living? And so higher living maybe is growth, and you want to grow, but so maybe it's to do mitzvot, maybe to do good things, and to do it not for the purpose of making yourself happy, but to do what would create positive energy within the world.
So I'm still not going to answer directly that, because there is no hierarchy. It's not like start with this mitzvah. Mm-hmm. It's still personable to each person. But I'd give a recommendation. One of the fundamental principles of Jewish life is a daily practice. Mm-hmm. Right? It's all about you do this every day, you do that every day. So I would say reciting the Shema and the sections that come after it every morning and every evening is a good place to start. It's a routine. Prayer in general is a good place to start because that's an opening. Another good place to start is to study Torah 10 minutes every single day. Just 10 minutes, but it's every day.
Mm-hmm.
Another good place to start is to put on tefillin every day. Keeping kosher. It can start with only buying kosher meat, which you can do now in Trader Joe's, right?
Okay.
It doesn't have to be like all the way to the extreme. Mm-hmm. So each person could. Here, there is a lot of liberty, there's a lot of space. It's like, where do you feel drawn? Then start with that, and then see where that goes. It is a classic thing about how a person, they would never keep Shabbat. Shabbat was meaningless to them, but somebody convinced them to light Shabbat candles. So the woman lights Shabbos candles, and then once the candles are lit, she thinks like, wait, these candles are here. How am I just sitting and watching TV? So she turns off the TV, and then we're just gonna eat dinner just like that. Let's make it because of the candles, right? And before they knew it, one mitzvah led to another, and that's the principle. Mitzvah gereret mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another. So as long as the person's engaged, as long as they're focused, as long as they're pushing forward.
What about for somebody who's not Jewish, a goy?
Yes.
I mean, there's not as many
There's
commandments.
not 613
yeah,
mitzvahs.
It's like 10 or 7.
There's 7, but I would still say the concept of prayer and Torah study in the areas that they can relate to, like knowing God and things like that. That's a good place to start. Incorporating a practice of charity, of helping somebody on a day-to-day level. In other words, America, we're all very charitable people. Maybe reactionary, like when something's coming up, so then we'll be there. But what if, like religiously, every day I have a certain thing that I do, or once a week? I think these are good places to start. Higher living does not mean getting high. It's not. We believe in living lower in a higher way. Like it's all really tangible. It's all working on your anger, not to get angry for the next 3 hours. If a person is struggling with anger, that's a higher living.
Not to perpetuate the negative, try to transduce it into positivity.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
One other point that I was thinking when you were talking about the example with the oil and stuff is I've been reading the parashah for this week, and Abraham sends Hagar out to the desert, and then her and Ishmael are like they run out of water and stuff, and then Hashem hears her crying and stuff, and he builds a well for her, and
Yes.
it kind of goes to the same, similar to how he heard the woman in the Haftorah portion crying out, and he kind of answered her.
Yes. Yeah. That's
I don't know if
interesting.
that's
yeah. That's a great connection there. Interesting. There was a prophet, but he was representing God, and this amazing miracle happened.
Hashem loved both of their husbands. He loved Abraham, and he loved the prophet that saved all the other prophets.
Yeah, and he loved this woman.
Yeah.
And ultimately she got helped. Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
Good stuff.
Is that a wrap?
Yeah.
Rabbi, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was
of
a
course,
pleasure.
man.
So much chacham v'bina v'dat.
Absolutely. We got there.
Yes,
another rung in the ladder.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Keep on building.
All right.
See y'all at the top.
Take care, people. Have a great weekend when it comes.
Bye.